Call to order 8 p.m. Everybody can stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mr. Blackburn, you can call the roll.
John?
Yes.
Sorry.
Here.
Wheeler? Here. Swint?
Here.
Casmer?
Here.
Alsted?
Here.
Renner?
Here, we have a quorum, so we will proceed. So we'll be back here to discuss the budget again. We've got a document called supplemental budget information number 2 here. That's next to everybody, plus it's in loaded up in board book, it looks like. So, Ronald, do you wanna explain information number 2 and then.
So, as you can see, I brought in the supplemental information here to address the questions that were asked earlier this afternoon. Just want to open up with a couple things. As refer back to Monday when we opened it, everything that we're doing is tied to somehow the mission and vision statement with the district and the strategic plan, which are all documents of the board in the district. With that, there's, so everything that goes in is somewhere tied to, direction, either through policy or, even directed by the board. But so to start off, the first thing that was asked about was the sinking and interest fund. So where, all that came from, what, to make sure that the general fund payment that was for the state aid from years ago with District 20. So I did call and visit with Paul Stremick this afternoon, got some clarification and things cleared up. And so he did state that that is in the general fund budget already. In fact, it's already been paid this year. It was paid back before I even got here, the first part of August, I believe it was. And so I did go in and
the loan against the state aid.
Correct.
The payment was okay.
Yep. Yeah, it's due like August 1st every year.
And which line item is that? If I'm looking back at your presentation from Monday's meeting, where is that included?
It is more than likely in the general admin. I'd have to, and that's another thing I would have to move it down. It should be in the debt service line. But so it would be, one of those things that it's included in the overall total budget. But I just need to rearrange the line items, so. And then back to the sinking and interest fund. So up until this year, we've done the about 20.92 mils to cover the bond payments for that are directed at the sinking fund. So, and as you can see here in the listing, that we've got bond payments that come out of the sinking and interest fund, and the building fund, and then the one out of the general fund. So with the sinking fund, we've got the 20.92 mils that is based off of the original District 1 boundaries, so the taxable value within there. So when that's what kind of skews if you take our total mills times the taxable value right now. It shows more than what we're actually levying, because the 20.92 mils is at $131,000 per mil versus the 269,000 per mil that the whole District 7 generates. So the new part this year is the 8.56 mils for the $2,302,000 for the principal and interest on the new elementary bond. And just to refer back to things that Paul clarified for me, and then also I believe he said that was a directive of the board that because we were going to hold off on selling these bonds and use that 20 million that we have in the building fund to start. But when they brought Measure 4 up, you guys as a board directed us to get that sold and on the books in case that passed, so that we would have those mills in the books to continue to get funding. Otherwise, we don't, I mean, nobody knows how it would get paid for if Measure 4 passes. So that in the sinking and interest fund is where the increase in mills this year comes from. So we had what's that? So there was, last year was about 115 mills. This year it's 100, a little over 124. So it's the additional or the new bond payment is what is adding the mills to the overall total that we're levying this year. So the general fund was, like I say, taken care of already within the general fund. And then just to break out what's paid for the building fund is the $1,074,000 in principal, $465,000 in interest. The sinking fund, right now before the new, did that? It has $2,048,000 were paid in the past in principal, and then $571,000 in interest, and then again the general fund. So, and again, like I mentioned earlier this afternoon, the reason that the building fund isn't able to do much with deferred maintenance is because of the bond payments that for some reason back a few years ago, some of the bond sales were directed out of the building fund. So until we get those paid off, there's not going to be really anything extra in the building fund going forward. So then the next part was what made up the increase in the revenue. So just to kind of show, so I went back fiscal year 24, the taxable value was 245,000. Fiscal year 25, it's up to 268, almost 269,000, which equates to $23,901 per mill. So if you take that times 70, you get basically as by maintaining the 70 mills in the general fund, it's an increase of 1.6 million to the taxpayers. And I know we talked earlier this afternoon with the RFP for the audit, but you guys were talking about that you didn't want to go out any more years than the 23, 24 because you didn't want to buy in future board. But by not levying the 70 mills, you're really kind of doing the same thing to future boards in that you're taking away funding. So like over 10 years, that's $16 million that the district loses. And in talking with Paul Stremick, he was like, well, why wouldn't you do the 70? And that's what I asked him. I said, why wouldn't we? And he mentioned that you're taking, the 1.6 million this year, but you got to remember too, taxable values increase each year. So that's going to compound. So over 10 years, you're going to be well over the 16 million that we're leaving on the table, just because not taking the 70 mills this year. So also with that, the state aid makes up the biggest portion of it. So looking back on the enrollments over the last few years, so 3 years ago, basically what year was that? 21, 22, I guess the first year with District 7, the enrollment was 4,911 kids. The next year it was 5,177. Next year or last year was 5,260. And so in this year it's 5,335. So that's also, our reasoning for keeping it at the 70 mils is our enrollment is increasing. So, and it's after the fact, so in arrears, so we're actually if we have our increases during the year, the enrollment then is updated the following year. So we're a little bit behind in getting that funding, but as the year goes, we're also getting more kids that they paid for it that year. So we've got that bubble that we've got to cover for kids that come in after the count date, and things like that. So of course we got kids coming in, kids leaving, but in overall, the district has been not on a huge increase, but on a steady increase. So with that, along with in years past, Wilmac got our special ed funding, which is about 5.2 million that we're now getting in our state aid. But with that, as I pointed out earlier, we have about 9 million in sped funding that we've got to cover. So that also adds to the increase in the spending on the budget. But and also with the sped, we never know if there's high needs kids coming in. We have to take the kids no matter what. I know I've heard some that we possibly got some more or some different kids coming in that are going to need special services, and we have to pay for those. And if we don't have the funds, we have to steal from Peter to pay Paul, basically. So we've always got to keep that in mind when working with the budget. Also with that for this year, we had the teacher bonus, where I gave the totals of earlier. We had the 4% raise for teachers, 5% for support, which was a result of basically cleaning that area up because it was just all over the board for the support staff as far as what everybody was paid. So now everybody is on a salary schedule. And so it resulted in an average of a 5% increase, but some got a little bit more, some got a little bit less. But now everybody is on that salary schedule, so it's going to be easier to budget going forward. And then also with that, we have 16 new teachers over last year. And also with that, our admin staff, and that stayed the same. So we don't have any more new admin staff. And one thing that I was going to look up, but then got sidetracked and forgot, but we had an increase in our health insurance. So as per the negotiated agreement, we pay 80% of the coverage. So that's an added expense on the salaries and things for the district. And then also visited with Eric and Kevin, and they've got for the deferred maintenance over the next 10 years.
We're working on a 10-year plan.
Yeah, and right now they're trying to keep it under 3 million, but nowadays 3 million is a drop in the bucket. Like Eric said, that's one boiler if something happens, and then it throws everything else out of whack when trying to do roofs and windows and everything like that. So they're working, Eric's been working on that with, trying to figure out what the needs are in that area. But then we're also working with, what's the name of the company? Well, the
PMTA.
yeah, that's going through and doing kind of an inventory of our facilities and stuff. So they're CMTA. Yeah. So they're also looking at our existing facilities giving us an idea of what needs to be fixed, where they think it's at as far as lifespan, given a priority of what needs to be done. And also one thing that we were talking about was in the past, the district has put a lot of their budget into salaries and payroll, which isn't a bad thing because that helps attract good people. But the offset of that is the buildings and things have suffered and not gotten the attention that they need. So, so with that, a combination of maintaining our millage, but then also the increase in our state aid and our enrollment increase is putting us in a good spot to start addressing those deferred maintenance pieces. It's not gonna come anywhere close to what's actually needed, but we'll be able to maybe add a couple more things in, or in their schedule, they'll be able to take, because the roof is gonna be a bigger expense than some other things, so they're able to maybe save a little bit, put things aside to build up to that roof. Also, like I mentioned, we're opening up a new school in 2 years, so we need to start building some capacity for that. We've got. What else was there? I mean, that's the biggest piece of it, but just, emergencies, our gas line that sprung a leak and now we got to replace all the pipes. So there's things that we can't predict, but there's things that we've got to plan for that are unpredictable so that we can take care of them, because ultimately we're here for the students. We've got to get them educated and get them graduated. But if we don't have the resources to do that, and again, it all ties back to our strategic plan, the mission statement, the vision for the district, that students are our number one priority, and we've got to make sure that they're safe, and also that we have the materials and the facilities to do that. So, questions?
Any questions?
Is the proposal from administration the document that was handed out earlier today then?
Yes.
That we need one.
Except for, I guess, special reserve will only be 450,000 for the bus purchases. And there will not be any levy on the special reserve.
I guess for purposes of discussion, Mr. Chairman. So, guide the conversation in a timely manner here, so. Second, I will move to approve the final Williston Basin School District number 7 for budget to include the following expenditures by fund. General fund, 85,496,893. Special reserve, 450,000. Capital project funds, $24,000,060. Sinking and interest, $5,053,501. Food service fund, $3,243,000. Activity fund, $1,096,000. Filing the final certificate of levy with the county as presented.
Okay, I have a motion for a second. Seconded by Mr. Smith. Discussion.
I don't know if I'll support the motion, but I think I'll get in such discussion. Majority that does, I will support that. Direction of the board, as it relates to the sinking and interest fund, we discussed last budget cycle that we would be levying $2,520,000. That was smoothed out based off of the excess dollars that were sitting in the sinking and interest fund at that time. Last year, we lowered the mills by 4 mills and change, so I don't think it's necessary to levy 2.75 based off of the information that we were given last year. And I think we're overtaxing based off of the increase in the valuations state aid received, so.
When. On this, the sinking industry fund, when I was talking to Paul this afternoon, he'd mentioned that, you know, we're looking at, when he initially set those, looking at the fund balance of the sinking and interest fund. That there isn't, I think he said there was a little under 2 million or something that was available, but just to kind of keep a cushion in there, he set it for, you know, what the payments actually were gonna be. Yes.
So again, I'm trying to wrap my head around things. I'm not gonna be discussing line items. Just gonna let that sit for now, and we can have some separate discussions at a later date, so I can put my head around it. From the time of the meeting at 12:10, when that one ended at whatever time it was, 1:30, and about 7 o'clock, I got a number of emails from various individuals within the community. All of them asking me to support approving the budget as presented. With some caveats to it, and those are, aside from deferred maintenance, which is incredibly needed, and we all know that, for increasing the budget from the 60, what was it? 65 to 86 million change, correct? Okay. How are we gonna be using that increase within the district as it relates to spec, as it relates to extracurriculars, as it relates to bringing in additional and new teachers and staff and support staff, paras? We desperately need more paras. In order to keep the wheels turning, to be able to follow our strategic plan and in turn be able to educate those students, but then also be able to prepare for the new school that we're going to need to have staff in. So how are we going to use that extra 20 million to be able to do those things? That's the caveat from a number of emails from a lot of patrons that I got in the last few hours, and I want to make sure I'm doing my due diligence on their behalf.
So we're starting meetings next week with, and we alluded to it earlier this afternoon about the budget or the position control. So a big part of that is we are meeting with each of the principals and their sped teachers from each of the sites next week, along with Wilmac, to see where we are currently at with services and what the principals see as their needs in their building. And then in conjunction with Wilmac, making a determination of where we need to place those services or place those individuals for additional support and help. Or if, you know, if we need to use their associated services, you know, with SPED or with OTPT, things like that. So that's the biggest piece with the SPED, because since it's new transition this year, I mean, the district's been involved with it, but it's been controlled by Wilmac. So, but also with that position control, we are determining also in other areas where the holes are at within the staffing of the district. So where the needs are at, be it paras, teachers. As I mentioned earlier, we've got 3 math positions that were not filled this year because we didn't have applications, but so we're looking at keeping, you know, making an inventory of things or positions like that, but then also keeping them open out on the website so that throughout the year, people moving in, graduates that graduate in December. There's some things that the state's doing for student teaching where we can bring those folks in. we're doing the J9, whatever it's called, the
J1.
J1s. So we're, we can use those folks. But it's keeping those in the forefront so that we don't miss the opportunity when those folks do need a position, or maybe somebody got transferred here with an oil job and the spouse is a teacher, they had to leave, but they can start now or February, and it doesn't have to be at the beginning of the year. So that's a big part of it. Is anything that I missed on that? No. But the big piece is the staffing, because like you say, there's holes out there where help is needed, but we've also got to determine that, is it a wish, a want, or is it a need? And so that's where working with Wilmac with the SPED area is going to be, okay, you've got this taken care of. So is this actually a need, or is it just a want because you want to make your job easier? So it's having those tough conversations also with the folks to be prudent with the budget, that we're not just hiring just because somebody thinks that they need a position.
I'll just add one thing to that, because I think this is an important item. After we get done meeting with the individual principals and their SPED teams, then we're going to bring the principals back all together. We'll have those priorities that have been outlined. We're going to work as a team to try to determine how to place individuals and where to place individuals based on those conversations, individual conversations. But I think the key there is everyone's going to know the needs of every other school, and we're going to have some give and take. We can't add every single position that's probably going to come out, but we need to be equitable in how we do it to fill those holes that Mike's talking about.
That also helps for budgeting in future years, knowing where those holes are and what, where do we need to save in other areas to be able to hire those. One other point that I just have to remember that I didn't write on here, but the other expense that is increasing for the district is transportation. We do get some reimbursement from the state for that, but it doesn't anywhere come close to covering what the actual expense of transportation is. And so I know District 8 always had transportation, but District 1 never did. So we're slowly, as allowed, which with the special levy is going to allow us to purchase some more buses, which the Harlow's is in a unique position that I've never heard of, but they actually have more drivers than they have buses. And we have 400 kids on a waiting list.
421 on the waiting list.
So by getting these buses and utilizing the additional drivers they have, we're going to be able to get those kids to class and fill that hole or that gap that has been created within the district. So
Okay. That was my primary question, and that was based on, as I said, emails, number of emails that I got from citizens who watched the broadcast, and they knew that SPED's my wheelhouse, and I would ask.
And like I pointed out this afternoon too, is that I pride myself in being diligent with tax dollars. I mean, some stuff that I'm working on currently, as far as the monthly finance report for the board, is having those detailed, it's actually going to be pretty much line item of where we're at with the budget, what's been expended. Some things that I don't think have been really done in the past is holding the departments and the individuals to that line item and, shutting it off once they've spent it, making them accountable and plan, which the Tyler system allows me to do that because it hasn't been turned on before, but allows me to turn it on, and it will not let them do purchase order requisitions if there is not budget in the line item that they want to use. I've been setting up some things with the sites where I call like a parent-child situation where we've given the sites a budget and it's been split out over line items for their site. But by putting this parent-child control in, it allows them that they've got their total for the site. And if they need to, but they've only budgeted $1,000 for this item, they end up spending 1,200, as long as they haven't overextended on the total, they can add that extra 200 to that line. But ultimately, they're not going to be able to go over the total for their site. So those have been implemented, and those will be reported to you guys each month as far as, you know, where the budget's at for the month and to the year to date. So, and then it has a percentage on there for the year where the budget's at. So it'll keep you all in the loop of, you know, where that money is going, and, you know, if it's, you know, there's gonna be cycles of, you know, the beginning of the year is gonna be, you know, more because you gotta pay for all the licenses and things like that. And then at the end of the year, when we're closing out the year and getting ready for the next year, there might be another spike. But you guys will see that and be able to start seeing trends and different things with the budget.
The other board members, any other comments, questions?
I so
Go ahead, Mr. Barson. We'll go to you, Mr. Walton, next.
my comment honestly was just to thank Mr. Arnold for his diligent work on the budget so far. I can only imagine how difficult that's been with such little time in the district, and to lead these meetings in that effort. I just appreciate his diligence and working forward through this obstacle. Just wanted to make sure that was heard also in staff. There's nothing more important than staff. So we want to speak for staff. I appreciate that as well.
Mr. Jett, I was just wondering if you would care to elaborate kind of on what's going on, and you thinking the overtaxation of people. And I mean, I appreciate the vigilance that has been paid to our budget, and if there's probably any wounds that we're still looking for, the fiscal management of the school board last year, so we want to make sure we're doing well. But I'm just wondering, Mr. Jett, I'd love to hear more of kind of what you're thinking.
Sure, when we're looking at a 7.8% increase in the taxable valuation of the district, I don't think it's prudent to take 100% of that and keep the mill levies at the max. I haven't come across a government entity yet that doesn't just continue to take 100% of the increases in the taxable valuation and keep the mills at the max. And it's up to the governing body of the government agency to put some control to it. When I look at the growth in the budgeted expenditures from 2 years ago to where we're at today, that's just not a sustainable path that we're on, in my opinion. And I would not have expected that we would have come to the table and necessarily approved a balanced budget this cycle, for the sheer fact that when we went through negotiations last time and we negotiated that $3,000 lump sum payment in year 2, the thought process in that, as I recall, was we had a large carryover balance sitting in the general fund that we were willing to take some of those dollars kind of as a retention piece to the negotiations, not with the intent of levying that against the taxpayers, but rather taking that from existing cash that existed in the district's bank accounts already.
Yeah.
And I kind of agree somewhat with Mr. John, except for the fact that our needs are so big. I mean, I don't think it's a matter of how much money we're taking, it's where we're putting it. I mean, if we're gonna do an extra roof or an extra, with this money, I think it's prudent that we take it. I mean, we are gonna get another school here. It's gonna, I don't care what anybody says, there's gonna be costs associated with that. You know, that's gonna be in a couple of years. I think for the foreseeable future, we need to get as much money as we can get. I would love to give a reduction in mills. I think we're just taking away from the students if we do that. I mean, if I handed out things, the taxpayer pays about 26% of all the taxes. You know, the rest is commercial, and a lot of 35% is pipelines and things of that nature. I mean, I think we're getting a deal, and I may be paying more taxes than everybody here, and I don't want to see that bond passed. You know, even though I'd say 20 grand. You know, I definitely don't want to see it passed, but I think we have to realize that it has a big chance of passing, and I just think we need every cent we can get for the school district and their needs. We have to watch how it's spent. Is my point, not what money we get.
I don't want us to be focusing on this measure. I am not going to approve a budget increase if it is tied to that measure.
I don't think it is.
Okay.
It's all
All right.
tied to that measure. I just think that's one part.
Okay, good.
All right, I
because-
don't believe we should do it for that measure alone.
Good,
I
because,
think it's part, it's
Okay.
not anything. The main thing is our needs. The main thing I'm talking about is that we had 200,000 that we didn't know we're gonna have. You know, just the other day, we moved kids into a safe place for the day. They didn't learn nothing then, you know? I mean, how many times is that gonna happen before, we learn to fix everything? We're gonna have to go to the public and get more money anyway, you know? I just think we need the money, all the money we can get. And it's because of needs, not because of that one item.
okay, good, because that's not a good rationale for increasing our mills.
Well, I don't believe so either, just a one deal, but I just, when you look at our needs and you look at us building a school, geez, I mean, we're gonna need every dollar we get. And if we build some of these jobs, it's better for us because it's gonna be better for students. And I just believe that we're gonna need every bit we can get.
Persuade. Any other comments?
Yeah, I've just been taking in everything that's said and it's difficult when you're talking about these kind of dollars and anything related to this, and you see a budget that's ballooned and you say fiscal responsibility at a out of control budget's not fiscal responsibility. You say one thing, I know Mr. Stremick was greatly involved in this process of building this budget, but the superintendent sitting across from me was also a part of that, whom we had that individual come help through that process. We paid somebody to help you do that, yet you are having to go back to that individual to get all the answers. And that bothers me. The answer should be sitting in this room. And you've had to consult with him multiple times and not been able to get those from our superintendent. That concerns me. I feel like this process was built outside of the district and not within the district. I'm not asking for a response. But what I am saying is fiscal responsibility is what this board's here for. I can't support a budget that is continuing to balloon and get out of control. We need money, we need staff. Show me where we're getting the staff pool from. Show me why all of a sudden it's what it is. I'm not comfortable with this. I understand the need for ensuring that we can move forward, but I also think it's unfair to unfairly tax our community.
May I respond? So fiscal responsibility has been demonstrated in this district. I'll give you the examples of what we've tried to do. So we had 27 administrators the previous year. In the budget, we have 27 administrators. So you're asking where the additional budgeted dollars are coming from, or the additional ask is coming from. We had 16 additional teachers added to our total from 1 year, 23 to 24. Those teachers were at the request of the building administration. When we went through the process of assessing their needs, and they go through a process with the HR department on what their actual needs are. We have conversations with them. The other individuals that are increasing the budget are support personnel to work directly with our kids, whether they're mental health, general paras, behavior paras, or special ed paras. So the increases that have occurred in this budget are coming because of the needs of the children in this district. And to my background in budgeting, from day one, when Mr. Arnold arrived, we've been working together to build this budget. There was some unanswered questions from the preliminary budget that we reached out to Mr. Strimick, who was working for us as a consultant to try to help us through the departure of our previous business manager. And there are a lot of things that I won't go into, Mr. Swint and board members, that have been cleaned up. So I will take criticism, constructive feedback, but when it's not factual, I do have a concern. And what you stated was not factual about my knowledge base and my assistance with the development of this budget.
So you had the answers, Dr. Fadley, for the questions that.
I am not a financial business manager, and I'm not an accountant. I'm a superintendent of schools, and my specialty is education leadership. Mr. Arnold is an expert in finance.
And that is understandable, but the questions for the budget that you were in sitting on as it was being built, the knowledge and information for what was being built, you didn't have any of the answers on.
That's not correct.
You had to seek clarifications from Stremick.
Because I'm not an expert in finance, and he is, and we have him on the dock as a consultant. So if you expect,
Those are answers I
you
would
expect the superintendent to be an expert in finance, that's not happening. I don't have that skill set.
I didn't say you were an expert, but I do expect you to understand the budget.
I do understand the budget.
Go ahead, Mr. Arnold. Today was the first time that I reached out to Dr. Stremick since the second week that I was here. We met. He turned over what information he had. And I mean, yes, other folks in the district were involved with creating that budget, but they weren't as in detail with it as what Dr. Stremick was. So the things that we checked with today were just verifying his train of thought, where he was going. I was getting clarification of the split between District 1, District 8 taxable value, District 7 taxable value with the sinking interest and fund. And I'm brand new to North Dakota. Yes, I have 20 years of school finance experience. Each state has their nuances. And if you expect me to learn them in 4 weeks, then I guess I'm failing, but.
Mr. Arnold, I don't expect you to actually have a grasp of any of this. I don't. And I think what should have occurred, in my perspective, was that Mr. Stremick would have been here and available for these questions, and this would have been done at our first meeting. And it wouldn't have put you in the position that you're in, answering all the questions to the board, since he was the main one with the knowledge and understanding of this. Not a reflection of you at all. I want to be very clear on that.
Well, but that was more my decision, because it's cost us $350 an hour to have him doing stuff, so didn't want to put that out.
I understand, but it's not a reflection at all, please understand, of anything that you've done. You're new, you have a lot to learn, you're still going through the process of North Dakota finance, and I understand that.
But also one thing that in all of my years with schools, I've never had as many requested meetings with the superintendent, or the superintendent requesting me to be in meetings as I have since I've been here in Williston. Dr. Fadley and I meet weekly to go over things so he can fill me in on what's been going on. I mean, we meet, we meet the whole cabinet team, so it's, it's just gathering everybody's information and knowledge.
Okay. Well, thank you for the better explanation. This evening, the budget has certainly gotten a lot larger. Part of that is because of state aid for special ed. Do you want to allocate another 4 million to special ed? I mean, I support that at this point in time, because I know how much special ed is struggling in our district. That kind of helps understand some of the increase. I think the other increase is the more students we have, obviously, compared to last year, but then there's also taxable valuation. We're looking at a $891 million surplus, which equates to 3 mils. So I think the question, what we're debating is, should we be levying those extra and using it for maintenance stuff, or should we be reducing it by 3 or I don't know. Might have to find, but I guess I'm questioning whether we need to have that surplus. I mean, you're looking at $16 million increase in your budget last year, and 9.8 of that is from state aid. So there's other things other than special ed.
How much is the surplus mills? What's the bare minimum mills?
Well, if you take that,
Yeah.
if you take that 891,000 and divide it by what a million
Yeah.
is, 69, it's 3.3.
Yeah.
That gets you down. I think
I mean,
if I'm hearing Dr. Fadley right and Mr. Arnold right, they're saying we have a lot of maintenance issues. We've got measure 4 coming up, and we just need to get as much as we can.
and where I'm sitting, and I don't mean to speak up term, so.
No, but
All right, where I'm sitting is, yes, I want to see the increase to SPED as well, the 4 million. I know for a fact that's needed. And, the deferred maintenance pieces, yes, we need that too, but I don't want us having extra mills of money that we're just sitting on. I don't think that that's fair. And that goes back to some of your points, Mr. Judd. I don't want to speak for you or put words in your mouth. And I'm literally on the fence over this. I've got the community members and taxpayers, and I just re-referenced a couple of the emails that I got telling me to approve this, but my brain is saying, do not approve this because it's not appropriate. But I've got the community telling me to approve it. I'm elected by the community, so I have to do what the community is telling me to do. I'm one vote.
I said one additional comment to make, and then for Mr. John. I guess I worry that we don't have that 10-year plan in place, and this 3 extra mills that we say we're gonna use for maintenance is just gonna get lost in the budget, and eventually it will just be going to whatever. So that's my concern. Mr. John, you had your own about.
Yeah, I would argue we're levying close to $2 million excess. Where I get that number from is the 8 million or 800,000 delta that's projected right now between the revenues and expenses, plus the 1.2 million ballpark of the one-time payment to the certified staff on that 3,000. There was no intentions from the board at that point in time to levy for those dollars. We're taking those dollars from the existing general fund balance.
That is correct. I remember that.
My final comment, Mr. Chairman, would be if the board is considering approving the motion that's on the floor in order to be compliant with the audit violation that was found back in 2022 related to that certificate of indebtedness, I think the board needs to potentially amend the motion to have the certificate of indebtedness fund listed in the expenditures there for that 1.36 and change. That has to transfer from the general fund into a dedicated fund where that payment's paid out.
And it did come out of that Fund 11. And then part of that was the transfer of the 1.386 to that from the, which is from what I've seen been done each year, it's been done the same way.
So it did happen. Except.
And that was
It did last year, we
August.
approved it like that last year. We approved a transfer in the general fund 1.386 to the certificate of indebtedness 1.386, and I assume that's where the payment would have been made. This is the audit violation from 22. So that's it. That has to be.
Well, I would agree with you that we do need to have that amendment put in there because this is directed from the violations. If you wanted to make that motion, I would support that.
Okay, would the board like to amend to include that line?
I'll make a motion to amend to list expenditures by fund to include the certificate of indebtedness of $1,386,300.
Okay, we have a motion,
Second.
second by Ms. Wheeler. Any further discussion? Okay, so like, could you call the roll on the amendment?
Barge.
Aye.
Wheeler,
I.
Swint.
Aye.
Casmer,
Aye.
Waldstad,
Yes.
Trent,
Aye.
Renner,
Aye, the amendment passes. Mrs. Langford, could you read the full motion back to us now here?
if I say no, am I in trouble? Okay, right. Motion to approve the final Williston Basin School District Number 7, 2024-2025 budget to include the following expenditures by fund. Is that what this is? Read these.
It listed in general fund.
General fund, want me to read all the numbers?
Yes.
Yes, please.
$85,496. $85,496,893. Special reserve fund,
450,000.
450,000. Capitals projects fund, 24,410,260. Sinking and interest fund, 5,053,501. Food service fund, 3,243,000. Activity fund, 1,096,000. And expenditures by fund to include certificate of indebtedness in the amount of
$386,000.
$386,300. And to authorize the filing of the final certificate of levy with the county as presented.
Sounds correct to me.
Yes, it matches what I have as well.
Okay. Any final discussion before I call the roll?
One last comment. I know it seems like we're levying unnecessarily, but I mean, we are, like I mentioned earlier, opening up a new school in a couple of years that's gonna add to our budget that probably not gonna be able to increase more or, enough to cover, so by planning a couple of years in advance, at least we're getting a little bit of a cushion there. And like I mentioned, I pride myself in watching where the dollars go. They don't get spent frivolously. We've got the controls in place to monitor where everything's spent, so things are not gonna get out of control.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Board members, any final? Mrs. Langford, you can call the roll.
Wheeler,
Aye.
Swint,
Nay.
Asmer,
Aye.
Wallstead,
Yes.
Junt,
Name.
Barsh,
Aye.
Renner.
Nay. Mr. Bassis. Do I have a motion to adjourn? So move. Okay, a motion second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.